Hey guys, welcome back. So today I've decided that I'm going to share with you all 5 things that you may not know about Masters in Counseling programs. These aren't necessarily secrets by any means, but they are things that I wasn't necessarily aware of or hadn't really thought about before going into a Masters in Counseling. So let's get into it. So the first thing on my list is that you don't graduate from a Master's in Counseling program automatically being able to be a licensed professional counselor. And I know that sounds kind of odd because that's usually how it is, right? You graduate from undergrad or even a lot of graduate programs and you're qualified to become licensed in that field. But counseling is a little unique in that aspect. And when I say licensed professional counselor, I mean LPC in most states. Some states call it an LCPC. Getting an MC or an MA in counseling just tells them that you have gotten the necessary educational experience and taken the required classes from an accredited program to be able to start working toward being a professional counselor. But just speaking for Arizona, where I live, you graduate a Master's in Counseling program being able to be an LAC, which means a Licensed Associate Counselor. And what that means is you can be a counselor, but you must be supervised by another LPC and be working in an agency rather than working independently or in your own private practice. So as an LAC in an agency, you have to get 3,200 hours of supervised clinical experience, which if you're working full-time usually takes about 2 years. And then after you gain those hours, you're able to apply for licensure and take the exam to be an LPC. I think this is an important thing to talk about because many people may believe that this is a 2 to 3 year thing to be able to get a license for professional counseling. But when you take into consideration your program being 2 to 3 years, plus likely an additional 2 years or more to get your required hours, you're probably looking at more like 4 to 5 years to be an LPC. The second thing on my list is that counseling or therapy of your own is encouraged. I was just as guilty of this, thinking that I should go into the profession having all of my life's problems solved. You don't need to have everything in your life figured out before going into the field because that's nearly impossible. And while most programs don't make it a requirement that you have to get your own counseling or therapy, I believe all CACREP accredited programs do have an experiential group component where we're considered the members and the leader is a PhD student. Sometimes other programs may have you seek outside counseling from a professional that's outside of the program. It totally depends on the program, but what I'm trying to get at is that you don't have to have everything figured out and you're not looked down upon if you go to counseling or therapy yourself. I'm a therapy goer myself for the past 2 years probably. As a counselor or therapist, I think it makes you more self-aware and better able to help your clients in the future. So number 3 on my list, you probably heard in undergrad C's get degrees. But in Masters in Counseling programs, they do not. In order to get credit for a class and have it count toward your requirements, you have to get an A or a B in order to move on. That's not to say that you should focus heavily on grades. I think you should focus more on how you're going to apply the concepts with your clients in the future, but also you shouldn't let your grades slip because you will have to retake the class. Not only that, but if your program is like mine, some classes are only offered in the spring or only offered in the fall. So say I get a C in a class in the spring, I have to wait a whole nother year to take it again, which would set you back a year for your master's degree. Number 4 on my list of things that you may not have thought about before is that transferring isn't as common or as accepted of a practice as it was in undergrad. Of course, there are exceptions, and maybe, for example, you have to move because your spouse got a job somewhere else. That's one thing, and it's certainly possible. It's not like in undergrad where that first year is a lot of gen eds or things that every program requires and it can be easily transferred. For the most part, if you transfer for a Master's in Counseling program, they're only going to take a limited number of your credits, and with every program having different classes and different course requirements, you do run the risk of losing credits in the process, which would really be a downer if you worked so hard for a great grade and it doesn't get transferred. This is another reason why I've said in the past that it's so important to do your research and spend time finding the right program for you, because once you're in it, that's kind of it. This is also why I recommend trying again the following year if you don't get into your dream program. rather than just going to somewhere that did accept you but isn't accredited or you're not as excited about. Lastly, number 5 on my list, and this may sound pretty obvious, but you have to be a lot more independent than you were in undergrad. While you do have an advisor in a master's in counseling program, and they of course are there to help you or meet with you to answer any questions you may have, they rely on you to know where you're at with your credits and what courses you still need. So as you go along in your program, you should be keeping track of the credits you have, what classes you've taken and still need to take, and also your practicum and internship hours, both direct and indirect hours for each of those. And that is it for my list of 5 things that you may not have considered before going into a master's in counseling program. I hope it was helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, you can't deny it's a good song.